Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of your weekly dose of Terraform. My name is Anton Babenko. Today we're going to talk about Atlantis and why Atlantis exists and whether it is still relevant. Today we will have guest and he's very active open source contributor, Bryant Biggs. I will introduce him and put him on live, on this stream in a minute. Before that, I just like to show or to make a couple announcements. If you've been watching this on YouTube, you may noted that I added a poll because I want to know what's actually the state of Terraform in CI/CD automation. I have no clue why YouTube has closed this poll, maybe because of some irrelevant answers there. But overall there were just two votes, but one person said that they're using CI/CD all the way, and another person is, I'm a little bit sorry for him or for her, because they use workspaces. So other than that, everything is going fine. I will probably open another poll because there are a lot of important questions which I'd like to know. So yeah. Luckily, nobody has been using Amazon Mechanical Turk for Terraform automation, so we are on the right track. Let's get started. So for now, I want to show my code. Well, not code, sorry, not yet. I'd like to say thanks to N0 for supporting my live stream, and N0 is pretty big maybe not competitor, but it's in the same field as Atlantis, right? You have your Terraform configuration code and you want to put it in some CI/CD pipeline, put some guardrails and do pretty much the same things what you can do with Atlantis. But N0 does it for you. It's a managed platform, so if you are interested in using it without maintaining it, take a look at n0.com, well, not blog, but /Anton. Okay, so that's pretty much it. If you want to join other supporters like N0 and many other companies and people who are supporting me, you can go to this repository or sponsors and then Anton Babenko and join these 22 people who are supporting my work. I'm preparing some pretty nice surprise for all of my supporters, but I don't want to tell what is a surprise, otherwise it's not going to be a surprise. Anyway, if you like what I've been doing for several years, please consider supporting me, because that's how I survive, pretty much. Also, if you are pretty new into Terraform and you don't know all of the tools, or maybe you want to know what kind of interesting blog post has been boiling on the internet, or somebody has created some awesome tool which you most likely will be needing in the near future, I recommend you to subscribe on weekly.tf. Go to this website, turn off your ad blocker if you have, because you will not see this input field. Put your email, subscribe now, and join several hundreds of other people who are watching this. There is actually quite an important thing which I want to mention related to Weekly TF. I try to collect different topics and then I publish them as newsletter. And quite organically, the topic of Atlantis has been covered in two very nice articles which I published a couple days ago there. So if you want to read more, go to Weekly TF and read the latest episode number 54 and two articles running Atlantis at Lyft, as well as another one by Dan Williams, who works for Love Holidays, are covering Atlantis in pretty nice details and very specific features. So check this out. Okay, let's move on. So what is Atlantis? Well, I can probably say like Atlantis is Terraform pull request automation, right? If you've been on the internet for a few days, you probably saw this website already. This website has not changed since, well, it doesn't have copyright, but I guess since about 2018. And that's because Atlantis is like solid piece of software out there. It's perfect as iPhone 11, which doesn't have to be changed in shape. It's already pretty good, right? Same with Atlantis homepage. Well, no, okay, jokes aside, Atlantis workflow, what is it? You create some Terraform configuration code, you open pull request, and then there is some worker, which is Atlantis binary, is going to be executed, and Terraform plan will print what kind of infrastructure is going to be created. So you see this kind of nice comment in your pull request. You can approve, or you can run Atlantis apply, and then Terraform apply will be executed. Very straightforward. I will show it in action in a bit. Why do we actually need Atlantis? Well, there are some benefits listed here, but I'd like to tell them from my perspective. I've been using Atlantis not so actively as sometimes I would like to, but my experience is that Atlantis is a piece of software which is standardizing Terraform workflows quite easily. You have configuration inside of YAML file, and you just have pretty standard Terraform workflow. It also has potential to enable all of non-operations engineers to do something with your infrastructure as code configurations. So you can see what's going to change, you can discuss it, you can commit new changes, and you can reapply it or run plan over and over. So it's supposed to have some lower barrier for people who want to contribute and to understand what's going on in this configuration. So let me look into a couple more links, and then I will introduce Brian, because Brian knows much more than me, believe me, guys. This is source code of Atlantis. So yes, it has 4,000 stars, and it has been growing quite steadily, despite the fact that there are other products out there, which, I have reviewed some of them on my channel in the past, like Scalar, M0. I will have an episode with Spacelift in the near future, as well as a couple other tools I'd like to review. Also, I'd like to review HashiCorp Terraform Cloud and Terraform Enterprise, but I don't think that they want me to do this. So we'll see. Not many people are so open to listen my feedback, but that's okay. So what is this repository? Why I'm showing this? Well, there are 4,000 stars, which maybe are not impressive enough. Everything is open source here. What I usually like to look is how many forks are there. So when you see 553 forks, you have to click on useful forks, and you have to figure out which of these forks are actually useful. What I mean by useful is Atlantis has a lot of features in itself, but sometimes different companies or different organizations want to add something more themselves. For example, they want to introduce features which are not actually going to be merged into the upstream Atlantis, so that's why they need to maintain it. If you go to useful forks website, or you can install this Chrome extension and search for this repository, you will see that there are quite recent changes. For example, in Lift fork, where I can see that they have a lot of commits ahead, and they have released it rather recently. Also, one of very kind of well-known, I would say, fork is Cloud Posse fork, where they added a lot of new features, and a lot of features will not be implemented in the upstream Atlantis. So if you are looking into something what is not in upstream, I encourage you to check these forks and maybe use those instead. Yeah, so that's my kind of advice when you are looking into popular project, but you think that this is not actually going to be merged. Then you look into other forks, and especially useful forks. As you can see, these are useful forks, not all 553. Okie dokie, let's move on. So lift I covered. So let's, well, it's time to bring our expert. Well, let me click the magic button first. Magic button, where is magic button? Here is this. Ta-da! Yeah, great. So we can see you. Yes, we can see you, but we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you. Cool.
No, perfect.
So welcome, Brian. I'd like to just introduce you maybe briefly, because many of attendees or many of people who are watching this already saw your face multiple times, and maybe even more people saw your name on GitHub, because Brian is very active contributor to Terraform AWS modules, as well as a few other open source projects, I guess. Can you tell about this?
Yes. Hi, my name is Bryant Biggs. Yes, active in the Terraform community, especially on the AWS modules. I do have a few modules I've created myself because they've come up across some of the projects I needed to use for clients or customers. Recently started trying to learn a little bit of Golang to see if I can help with the upstream provider, to see if I can get some of those features I'm looking for a little bit faster. Yeah, been working in the cloud for a couple of years now. DevOps, cloud security, cloud architect, all those places, and so that's where I predominantly tend to focus in terms of open source. Just trying to use what's out there for any of the projects that I'm currently working on.
Yeah, cool. I saw a couple of your recent projects or recent modules for AppConfig and DMS, and guys, I really understand everything what you do here. It's very much point on how they should be written. So really, if everyone is willing to see other modules outside of Terraform AWS modules of very high quality, I encourage you to check Cloud. I don't know how to pronounce it, but Cloud House.
Cloud House, yes.
Yeah, Cloud House. So yeah, check this out, and I'm sure that if people want to use AWS AppConfig, well, that's a default option for most cases right now.
Thank you.
So yeah, this is very nice stuff. Let's talk about Atlantis, and let's talk about different use cases and how this actually is supposed to be used, and then we will go in more details how we are actually using it for different cases which you have and which I have. So I'd like to start with this, well, not this one, with a basic example. So I have, restored, probably restored one repository which I use usually for things related to Atlantis demo, and I really like to keep this pull request open. I have no clue why I started it 31st of December 2018. I probably didn't have anything to do before New Year, but yeah, that's just crazy. I mean, what else can I do on New Year Eve? Of course, work with Atlantis. so yeah, let's see how Atlantis work. So I have, I have actually deployed. Let me show some code. Well, we lost you, but I will add you to this one too. Let's see, I add you here. Yeah, cool. So I'd like to show how I deployed Atlantis, because I think it's quite interesting. Valid but ugly we don't need for today. So let's look into the way how I deployed. So I use module which is Terraform AWS Atlantis, and everything what I did here is I took this Terraform TFR sample file, put values which I need myself, and executed, and now I have created the whole ECS cluster with Fargate, using Fargate, and deploy Atlantis on it, as well as all required resources like certificates, application load balancer, and so on. So all of this is inside of Terraform AWS modules. I run it and I got what I wanted. So pretty straightforward. If I look into what I have, well, I have created Atlantis instance somewhere on ECS, and then I configured webhook for this GitHub repository to send certain types of events into this instance of Atlantis. Very straightforward, very well documented. There is no need for us to go through that right now. Then I open, let's say I want to deploy I want to see how this pull request is going to happen, right? So I open pull request where I changed something. I changed some content of TF files, and then what happens is that GitHub notify Atlantis, and Atlantis execute code from this specific pull request, like this, and then it just says, well, it outputs all here. So as you can see here, we can see output, what's going to be created, and that's pretty much what I wanted. I want to create S3 bucket and object, and that's it. So as you can see, nothing really complicated happens here. This is like default way of using Atlantis. What Atlantis is also able to do, and that's what I've been using it myself on some other projects, is instead of using just Terraform, I use it with Terragrunt. So Atlantis has pretty good configuration options when it comes to how your Terragrunt structure looks like, and it's very well documented. I don't think we need to discuss that in details. So let's kind of think about what else can we do with this flow. Like we change code, we run Atlantis plan, or we run Atlantis apply if we want to apply it, and that's pretty much it. Do you have any other use cases, or how would you use it, Brian?
Excuse me. Yeah, there's a couple use cases. So Atlantis has been adding a number of features, like the ability to use Terragrunt for those that use that capability. Within your Atlantis workflow, you have the ability to set up a repo side configuration, and that kind of says, you know, where your projects are located. You can set regex patterns on, you know, when you want to trigger a plan for that workflow. So for example, in your project, if you have a local modules folder, and you update that modules folder, you can tell Atlantis, like, hey, also watch for any changes under this directory to re-trigger a plan for yourself there. Within the comment section where you run your Atlantis apply, you can do a number of things. You can do plans, you can do targets, so plan a target, apply a target. You can unlock, so that's sometimes a fun thing to get in with colleagues. So because with Atlantis, it's kind of, you can think of it as single-threaded. If there's a pull request open and it has planned a couple of projects, and somebody comes along behind you and opens up a PR, they will be locked or blocked from doing anything further until that PR is dealt with or the lock is freed. So you can do that through the Atlantis UI. They have a nice simple UI to look at the available locks there, who's using them. Or
yeah, let me show this stuff. So this is where UI is located, and currently I have only one PR. Where I can see that Terraform, well, the font is a little bit small, but Terraform example 1 is directory where, which is currently being locked by this PR. And I find it sometimes a little bit confusing for people to figure out why my PR is not, or is blocked, why I cannot merge it, or why I cannot do anything, is because the same configuration directory is being changed in another pull request, and it's kind of important for people to understand. Or you can override it by going to your Atlantis installation and then click somewhere here and just say discard plan and then lock, and if you click this one, then people will be able to continue applying their pull request. But it's, as far as I understand, this is not so often when you need to do it, right?
It kind of depends. From my experience, it shows what I'll call a pattern. So if you get a repository where you have a lot of people running into lock conflicts and you guys are kind of stealing locks from one another, um, in my mind, I think that project's probably gotten a little bit too big and it's time to kind of like separate things out. And then that allows people to come through, make their changes in a PR, hopefully get them approved quickly and applied. Otherwise, it could be also a team process flow of like, hey, we just need to review these more quickly, get people unblocked, rather than trying to steal the locks, because that can get a little bit frustrating, a little bit confusing, depending on people's experience.
Yeah, currently I'm using only one folder. And I also think that if there will be a need for, let's say, multiple changes in the same configuration directory, maybe it's an indicator that it's time to split it into some different modules, or maybe make it as separate configuration. Well, that's often the way how I'm thinking about configuration. If it's getting too big, then of course it's just getting too big. It's time to split it, refactor it in different ways. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. So I executed this command Atlantis plan -d, because I wanted it to run inside of just this directory, and it took a minute, and Terraform plan was executed inside of this directory, and I see pretty much the same output, because that's the only directory which I have with Terraform code. Cool. Any other use cases you envision for that?
Yeah, there's a number. So I guess the way that I've seen a lot of things happen, the life cycle, small teams, typically where I start out, they do the CLI approach, and that doesn't scale, obviously. You can even use the S3 backend with the Dynamo lock table, and that kind of resolves some of those conflicts. But eventually, teams get to the point where it's like, hey, how do we make this kind of like our software development lifecycle, where we have a peer review, have it kind of automated? That's where Atlantis, I think, kind of has shown, because it was the first one out there, open source, where teams could quickly spin this up. Now we've got a couple other competitors, or even all the way up to Terraform Cloud, Terraform Enterprise from HashiCorp. So yeah, the other use cases that I see coming in now, I haven't gone into them in depth myself, but what we're looking at is being able to better enforce the SDLC with Atlantis. So you can have some things like you can only apply when you have an approval. You can only apply when you have what's called a mergeable state. So if you have other checks that run in GitHub, GitLab, wherever you're running your Atlantis, all of those checks have to pass before a user can apply. Or you can go really strict and say it must be approved and it must pass all mergeable states. And then in addition to that, Atlantis, I'm not quite sure what version it was, introduced the ability to set Conftest policies. And again, that's another way of being able to structure a set of requirements before things will succeed, and you can proceed with your applies. So I think that's one very interesting way of having that policy as code before you start applying changes out into your infrastructure.
Well, let's talk about this, like apply requirements, which you mentioned, that let's say pull request has to be approved, or it has to meet certain requirements. As far as I remember, this was one of main feature which was missing in Atlantis for quite some time. That's why guys in CloudPose forked Atlantis and introduced this feature with rather specific implementation details. So that's why it's not possible to use it in upstream Atlantis. But we already use, let's say, GitHub, and we have multiple ways of, let's say, have reviewers here, or we can say that we want to use like protected branch, and then we can specify what kind of custom checks certain PR has to satisfy. Like in this case, you can see that 2 failing, 1 successful check, and sometimes people can add even GitHub application which will indicate that this is mergeable or not. I find this quite helpful for people to use inside of GitHub. And well, yeah, that's approved and mergeable. I'm not sure how old these features are, but they're definitely very kind of required, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the caveats we found with this that I think catches out a lot of people is they'll put in and say, oh yeah, it must be approved. And a lot of people, especially on the GitHub side, using code owners, they just assume that there's a linkage that if Atlantis is looking for an approval and there's a code owners file, that you can only proceed when one of the required code owners approves. That's not the case.
Yeah, pretty much anyone can approve anything, right?
Correct. Yeah, if you want to kind of enforce it to the code owners, you have to do both the approved and mergeable checks. And so that will say like, okay, we have an approval. Oh, the repository wants a code owner approval. Then everything is mergeable and you can proceed from there.
Yeah, that's really important, especially if you have a lot of different Atlantises and a lot of users, and even sometimes on our open source projects we have approval from someone, like not from maintainers, but from anyone, because like for me it was actually quite a surprise when I first discovered a few years ago that anyone can approve anything. If you go to any repository and you find pull request, you can say like, hey, I approve this one. That's sometimes scary. I remember I panicked and I was like, oh my god, did I accidentally forget to restrict access somewhere in settings? And I went into settings and I see there was no issues, and then I talk to people and then they say like, oh, it has been like this forever. I thought, oh my god.
Very eager folks to get changes in.
Yeah.
And readily approve.
Yeah, it also happens in our Terraform/AWS modules when some, well, let's say one employee of the company open PR, then all of his colleagues, like 2-3 other guys, approving it. It's so funny. Like, yeah. Okay, let's talk about another very exciting part, which is related to the policy. I don't think we need to see anything in the documentation, no, in the code itself. Here, where is it? Policy, where is policy? No. How Atlantis works? No.
I think it's under
Conftest. Yeah, Conftest. Okay. So, do you have any experience with using it, or let's just explain what is actually all of this? Let's explain it faster than people can read this on their screen.
Sure. I haven't used Conftest. I have been using Open Policy a little bit. But yeah, basically what Conftest does is it looks at the structure of your plan, and you are able to write some rules to say pass or fail. So for example, it'll look at the plan and a security group, and if the port is 22 and the ingress rule is quad 0, meaning anywhere in the world, you can set that as a failure. And so if a pull request comes open, somebody has that in their security group, that will immediately mark it as failed. They won't be able to proceed to plan and apply, even if they do get approvals or other checks.
Right, so it will be part of mergeable requirement. So it's
correct.
Like addition to mergeable apply requirement block. Right, yeah, and as you say, example with security group rule is something what we have been thinking about for quite some time, right? We add some code and we want to make sure that this code is actually not opening everything to the public internet. So there are already 25 solutions out there, like commercial products, starting from Checkov, TFSec, TF-Lint, and everyone else. But in many cases, you would like to have your own policy. For example, you know your own stuff pretty well, and you want to have full flexibility to write these policies. So to do that, you can you can use Conftest to write policies inside using this regular language, which sometimes not very easy to understand and to work with. And at some point, Atlantis will execute them and will tell yes or no, failed or not failed. I'd like to make a important kind of addition that Conftest is not always doing what you expect it to do. So, like I talked about this multiple times during this week, but I'd like to mention this even more. If you see that Conftest supports HCL and HCL2, and then you write your code, well, do I have my code somewhere here? Yes. And then you write your code which looks like this. So let's say this is my resource which I want to evaluate, and on the right part you're using some Terraform specific thing. Conftest will not always be able to help you with this detail, because it will only help if this information is like resolved. But if you, like in this case, it's resolved because there are no references to other resources or module outputs. But if I would write this, let's say, as, I don't know, random pet of this ID, and this stuff is not yet known, then Conftest will not be able to catch this. So, for example, you cannot write something like this, and if ID equal cat, then it should be true or false. So Conftest will not be able to help you with that. So I kind of sometimes assume that people know this, but I also can tell you that many people don't really care about this. So it's very easy to find, like to my experience, it's very easy to find tool which is great, but you probably skipped the README section and just start using it right away, and then you figure out that it's not exactly what you want to do. So be careful that this is not possible to evaluate until you execute Terraform apply, while this is possible to know, and all other things are already well known. So you can make assertion in your Rego policy, and that everything will be fine. But this is a side note. We will talk about Conftest and Open Policy Agent in the future, because this is a very big topic, and I'm personally quite interested in developing some things there too. So let's go back to Atlantis, because I feel Atlantis is the main topic of the day. Okay, what else can we do with this policy checks? So yeah, this is how policy looks like in Rego. Rego is language for that. Sometimes you can think like, oh yeah, that's quite easy, but then if you look into this more, you will understand that this policy is actually dependent on specific version of Terraform, because there are these change actions, and this is key inside of JSON, inside of plan file, or resource changes. So if Terraform decide to change something, your policies may break as well. They will not change it in the near future anyway, but just be careful. So what other features do we want to highlight in Atlantis?
Yeah, there's a few other recent changes that have been made in Atlantis for, I'll say, usability. So again, going back to projects that are probably getting to the point that need to be refactored. Sometimes if you have multiple projects that are affected, say for example, if you have a local modules, that may affect 4 or 5 projects within that repository that use those. And so you'll have what I call the wall of plans, and you're just kind of scrolling, looking through all these plans. If you see something that you a typo, misspelling, or you did something incorrectly, and you push up another commit, now you've got even further to scroll down. So they've recently added the ability to auto hide. So there's an environment variable or a configuration flag that you can set. So that kind of like collapses those, makes that output hidden from users, especially in GitHub. There was another change for syntax highlighting in terms of making it more apparent to users when there is a addition, which is green, a removal, which is red, or destroy. And then I think the other one is it's kind of an orangish color when there's a in-place update. I was kind of excited about this. I rolled it out for our group, but it also kind of coincides with some of the recent changes in 1.0 Terraform
Exactly.
and the
replace
the things that are changed outside of Terraform. So
Yeah.
a lot of your plans that we're seeing are very dirty because when you send something off to AWS, they may reorder IAM policy statements. There may be some tokens that get refreshed on every plan or apply.
Tags all is being added everywhere.
Yes.
Tags all is like, I don't know, for me it's noise in 90% of cases.
Yeah.
Suddenly everything is tags all. Yes.
When you turn on this feature with colors, now it's an even brighter and noisier output. So it was interesting. I think some of our more junior developers, or I'll say the software engineers that come over and want to make a change in the infrastructure side for whatever they're working on, that highlighting that more bold green or red of like, hey, this is good, it's just going to add something, it's safe, or hey, this is red, it's going to remove something, helped them out. But yeah, the dirty outputs from those what's changed outside of Terraform are something that we're looking to HashiCorp to hopefully fix soon.
Well, that's probably gonna to take a lot of time. And when I'm looking into Atlantis, that's kind of a more philosophical thing. So who has started Atlantis? Well, long time ago, about 2017, I guess. Mishra, as well as Luke, started working on Atlantis when they worked for Hootsuite, I guess, was the name of the company. So then Mishra joined HashiCorp, and in some time Luke also joined. Main question which I remember that time was, hey, will Atlantis be discontinued and we should drop it immediately and start looking for something better? The answer was no, we're gonna to keep it alive, we will maintain it, add new features. And I'm actually honestly surprised that this promise has been kept. And like as of now, Luke is still doing great job applying different pull requests, doing customer support, and everything is going as expected. But if we look into what Terraform has been adding over time, and even with this release 1.0, where several flags being added into Terraform CLI, for example, we can do different types, like you mentioned, changes outside of like external changes, right? Or changes outside of configuration, or we can run Terraform apply and then specify replace flag if we want to replace certain resource. All kind of these changes are rather different dependent on version. So what it means is that if we now have to support these flags inside of Atlantis natively, well, that's a lot of work. I just don't see how Atlantis will be able to continue this pace if Terraform is being like constantly changing this. Like today we add these flags, then we remove these flags. I understand that 1.0 promise and all of this compatibility letters which were public during HashiConf. When was it? HashiConf, when 1.0 was released. They're good, but I just cannot imagine that we will still be able to see the same pace of development. At the same time, why HashiCorp should have several products, competing products in the same field? I mean, yes, we can say that HashiCorp wants to do the best for everyone and satisfy everyone, but well, I'm a bit unsure that as a business owner I would like to support something what is actually not so beneficial for the business. So, well, that's my thought. Do you have some ideas on that? Where Atlantis is moving?
Well, I'll say Atlantis has come under fire, or, again, like a lot of competitors, and I know the biggest ones being Terraform Cloud, Terraform Enterprise, especially when people say, oh, how do we do this? Oh, there's Terraform Cloud, Terraform Enterprise. That's where we need to be. I have used those. It's been 2 years now since I used Terraform Enterprise. I was not a super fan of it. It was kind of expensive, kind of clunky at the time, still very early days. But one of the things, and especially a project we're working on, is when Atlantis needs to talk to resources in a private network. I think from the Terraform Cloud Enterprise perspective, your only option is to have the self-hosted Terraform Enterprise agents. Again, that's kind of expensive, especially for smaller groups. So I think there's still a lot of
you can use.
benefit.
I mean, if you're using Terraform Cloud, there are also Terraform Agent Cloud. So there are also Terraform Cloud agents, which are way cheaper and still
Okay.
affordable. But again, if you use Enterprise, then yes, you indicated that you have a lot of money already. So.
Yeah, that's one of the areas that we're currently looking at. So we predominantly, or I've predominantly been using Atlantis for I don't know if you want to call it SaaS offerings, but say, AWS, Okta, things that you typically communicate over a public API and some sort of credentials authorization. Now we're starting to see a lot of more custom providers coming out for configuring the internals of different, especially things like data stores. So Kafka, topics, Elasticsearch indices, user provisioning within data stores. And in order to be able to facilitate that, we need to be kind of on our private network to where Atlantis can talk across the private connection into those data stores. And so project I'm working on is, I called it Federated Atlantis, to where we can have an Atlantis installation in each environment, each account. And then we need to somehow proxy those webhooks into those different Atlantis configurations, and then back out to the pull request without creating duplicate, triplicate, however many redundant plans. But again, there was a recent change in Atlantis to where they set a configuration flag that said if there was no change, don't show anything in Atlantis. And this was that primary motivator that was coming out of it, where people wanted to run multiple Atlantis installations. And I think one of the biggest commenters on that active issue within Atlantis was Eric from Cloud Posse. So this was something that they were looking for early on as well. It fit their philosophy of a installation per environment to keep that nice separation. I haven't tracked down yet what they've done with that, but I suspect they're working off of their fork for that solution.
Not really. No. That's another kind of story. Is that we looked at things like Atlantis. I mean, okay, let's look a little bit earlier. We had Jenkins, and then we figured out, oh, there should be something better than that because I'm going to use Terraform. Okay, there is Atlantis, which understand only Terraform, and it was good. Then people start to expand it on different occasions, fork it, add new support, and so on. One of these support is Terragrunt, and I'd like to say big thanks to these guys and the work which they do on this Terragrunt Atlantis config is very, very helpful. So it's like if you use Terragrunt inside of like with Atlantis, you would like to have dynamic configuration file generated for you based on what you have. So it's like the tool itself scan your Terragrunt configuration and figure out who depends on what, and it generates nice YAML configuration file which is then consumed by Atlantis. Very helpful tool, and it saves me a lot of time. They described recently how to put it into pre-workflow hooks, but well, this is probably something new I don't know about. I use it old-fashioned way. I use it as a pre-commit hook. So when developer commit, then developers execute this utility locally, and it updates this file for them. and that's pretty nice.
Nice.
Yeah, so if people are using Terragrunt, I'm sure that this is lifesaver for many situations. So thank you very much, David, for that. Well, what I wanted to tell, yeah, you asked, or you said that like, well, not you said, but I said, and then I asked, and then I forgot what I wanted to say. But anyway, I think that the direction where many of these tools are heading is, okay, you have an open source Atlantis project. People start using it, people fork it, people add a lot of things. Developers have their own vision, so obviously there will be a lot of forks which are not compatible with upstreams. That's fine. Situation which has happened or which is happening with Cloud POSE, again, that's my just kind of humble opinion. I don't know details so much, but from what I understand is that many users of Atlantis at some point became like literally fed up with managing it and prefer to pay someone else to do that for them. So that's why there are a lot of CI/CD solutions out there for Terraform. It's not because Atlantis is bad, but it just it has so many configuration options, which is like if you look into configuration files, which I opened before, it's just too big. It's like it's a lot of different options, a lot of different things. At the same time, it's moving target because they add new features, you need to update them, you need to test them, and so on. So I think all CI/CD systems out there, they have pretty bright future because there will be more and more people who use Terraform, and they at the same time say, oh, Atlantis is good, but I don't need it. That's actually wrong. You need to have experience with Atlantis to understand how Terraform works. You need to make this pain exercise and see how to deal with certain limitations, why it's working this way, to understand how Terraform works. It's not like very polished solution which we can just install, provide 2 configuration values, and that's it. It's not smart enough out of the box. You need to provide, like in my real project where I use Terragrunt with Atlantis, it's like 20 different environment variables to configure Atlantis in certain way. And honestly, I don't remember even half of this by heart. I need to go to documentation, I need to spend time thinking about why did I enable that feature but not this feature. So it's very complicated thing. It's not like Unix philosophy where we have one tool to do one small things. We have one tool to do thousands of small things.
Yeah, some of the I guess the 2 biggest complaints I've heard as well is the nice thing about Terraform is that it's streaming the output, what it's actually doing, right to your CLI typically. And in the Atlantis flow, you don't see that. So if there's something that is constantly trying to update, or for example, spinning up a Kafka cluster takes up to 15-20 minutes sometimes. You're just kind of sitting there looking at Atlantis, and it's a black box because it's capturing that output, but it's not giving it to you in real time to say, hey, I'm working on it, I'm working on it. And you're just like, is it broke? Did something go wrong? So that can be a little bit frustrating.
Well, that's a very good point, because just when I was preparing for this episode, I looked into Lyft fork, and I saw log streaming output commit message. So maybe they added something like this. But again, I don't know how to do this in comment. Well, you can constantly notify GitHub and update comment message. Maybe that's what they do. But well, then you will receive thousands of emails.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they could, stream it to the UI. I've never really understood the Atlantis UI. It's very simplistic, and it just kind of is a list of like, here's the plans that are out there that have locks. But yeah, I mean, that would be a pretty useful feature, I think, for some of the folks I've worked with, to where you stream that output that you're looking for. Like, okay, I see Atlantis is still working through it, because to stream it to a GitHub message is not going to be practical nor feasible.
Well, is this it? I don't know. Close handler call. So adding logs, streaming logs for debugging. Maybe that's. Let me see. Sounds interesting. Because it would be pretty handy if there is a possibility for that.
Yeah, the other one is, I know it was pushed for quite a while, the ability to run, excuse me, Terraform plans and applies in parallel. Atlantis did eventually add it, but unfortunately, you have to be using custom workspaces. There must be something in the internal logic to where if you aren't using workspaces, obviously all of your stuff is going to be going into the default workspace, which means for users that are not actively using workspaces, you cannot use Atlantis for those parallel plans and applies, unfortunately. But again, that kind of goes back to, that signifies to me when a project is taking forever for a lot of plans, it's probably too big, time to separate that out. But still, the ability to run those in parallel would be a time saver.
Yeah, you know, one more thing which is pretty, like when you said about limitation of Atlantis right now, I don't even remember if I've had any discussion with anyone on that topic. Is like, we are telling to people that, hey, there is centralized way to run your Terraform configuration, Atlantis. First impression from people is like, yeah, that's what we want. And then, after some time, you tell them that, by the way, you need to run Terraform state mv command, and remember to run Terraform import at some point of your life, and do some other things which we from time to time still have to do, no matter what people say. So what I really would like us to have at some point is there should be some sort of interface for us to assume credentials of Atlantis, but execute our own predefined commands. Like I'd like to give certain permissions to some people to do some things, but I don't want them to have like long-lived credentials or anything like that. I still want to keep all benefits of Atlantis. And at some point, we still have to have like, oh yeah, I'm using Atlantis for 90% of things, but I still have my laptop where I do cowboy-style development, where everything is going to production anytime I forget to switch branch.
Yeah, I think the
I'm talking about myself.
I mean, as much as we would like a pristine process where developers don't have direct access, there's always those cases. For example, within the modules, we have a breaking change within a module. For example, the VPC change recently, where we kind of split off the way VPC endpoints are handled to be more flexible. But again, that requires individuals to go in there and make some state move commands in order to avoid disruptions to their resource creation or deletion. And that requires that direct interaction with the Terraform CLI. And
yeah,
I haven't seen that in any tool.
Well, I think this is happening even more and more, because people eventually introduce more and more Terraform in different places, and then they figure out, oh, there are not enough loops, we need to add more functionality, and then they start refactoring. I tried to find the thread which I discovered recently about so from Reddit it was for loops. Terraform loops are yeah, this is pretty interesting read. Oh my god, 103 upvotes from people who don't understand Terraform still. So anyway, the whole discussion here, you don't have to read it all, just read like upvoted comments. It's quite interesting. The most upvoted comments are from people actually use Terraform and they have some opinions. If you scroll like most recent comments by people, well, there are a lot of them. You will see a lot of mentioning of like, hey, don't care about this stuff, use Pulumi, like this one. It's one reason I'm looking to learn Pulumium. So what I'm just trying to say is that yes, Terraform has a lot of limitations. We still we should never treat it as like programming language, or think that if we write this code but just rewrite it differently, it will suddenly magically understand what to do with configuration. We always, at least for the foreseen future, will have to deal with Terraform state MV or some sort of migration procedure. There are several of those using external tools. So that's why you will have to put this in some sort of script where you describe that instead of running just Terraform apply, run Terraform state MV, pretty much what we described in upgrade guide for, let's say, VPC, or I think RDS was a good example, where you described very well 5 different, well, not RDS Aurora. I just want to show to everyone what kind of, well, where is this upgrade guide?
There was VPC, there was auto scaling, EC2.
Oh, right. Okay, so it's not RDS, but it was auto scaling. Yeah, in auto scaling, there were some things like upgrade instructions, which happens quite often. That, let's say, this is break and change, so whoever is using this one now should run Terraform. You don't have it here, but they have to change Terraform state MV command from one value to another value if they want to change it. Well, this is maybe not the best example, honestly, because here we don't write so detailed instructions. But in any case, the point is that there will be a lot of situations when we need to run more than just plan and apply, and we need to come up with this at some point. Why this is shown here, 2018, well, that's a little bit too old. Anyway, I want to show here upgrade. So here we can see that some resources were completely removed. So if you use this module on previous version and you just change something, it will not it just will not work because it will error. I don't know if it will happen in the near future, but there is definitely incentive from many people to have this also, to have this update process also as part of the code. When will it happen? We don't know yet. Hopefully we will know more in 3 weeks during HashiConf, but for now that's not possible, so we need to use our own Terraform state MV combinations of it. Okay, let's think about something else for Atlantis, because as you can see we talk about our use cases. Is there anything else what we should make clear?
Yeah, the other area that I'm looking in is security. So I do use our AWS module, and traditionally that was using a GitHub personal access token, which is not great these days. And now there's a change to where you can run Atlantis using a GitHub OAuth application, and so that uses the OAuth flow. So that's one of the other upgrades I'm looking to do, and I think we've had a few PRs on the module to verify or create examples showing that flow. And then the other one is, I don't know if it's specific to Atlantis, but obviously with Atlantis being your administrator, your elevated entity to provision these, protecting that permissions flow of what Atlantis can do and which accounts, because we use it all the way up to the root, payer account, if you will. So protecting what Atlantis can do, what that assume role chain looks like, and making sure that people can't do certain things with those roles and permissions that Atlantis uses because they are traditionally quite elevated in access.
Well, yeah, I made a hack for that some time ago, where I use Atlantis to. I don't think it was even Atlantis that time, but I wanted to enforce MFA when certain things happen. And the way I did it is that I made custom application on LastPass, which generate me this one-time password, like 6 digits, right? OTP is called. And I use this to assume certain role. And so when Atlantis was executed, my phone was asking like, hey, is it you who execute Atlantis? And I said, yes, yes, yes. Then I still have this application on my phone, but I don't have access to that Atlantis anymore. So yeah, this is pretty interesting way to check whether managed CI/CD has this vulnerability. Feel free to use it on. Well, I don't want to to name anyone, but there are some providers where you can execute it and get not just your access keys, but sometimes a little bit more. Even if it's running in container and some short time credentials, still sometimes you get a little bit more than you wanted. I did previous reviews on several tools where this can be misused. Now this is probably fixed, but still watch out for this check. It's quite hilarious still, 2021, and still you can use it. Right. Okay, good. So I think we are pretty much out of time, and we covered most of Atlantis, if it's possible to say so. I personally wanted to have this episode with anyone who's using Atlantis like you do for real, and I wanted to have this episode for probably more than a year. Because it's definitely top 2 tools which people know or use or should use. Yeah. And I really believe that people should use Atlantis at some point of their life, whether they have nothing to do, or they want to know Go, or they want to know how Terraform behaves, or they want to even get their hands dirty to put some CI/CD with Terraform. Like I mean, okay, you can put it in Jenkins if you want, but maybe something more specialized for Terraform is suitable. So I still want people to use it, and I wish all the best to this project.
Yeah, one of the weird, I don't know if it's weird to me that I've seen lately is GitHub Actions are being used now just as that proxy. So when you open a pull request, they have a workflow that is triggered to do a Terraform plan. They just output to the comment, and then once it's approved and merged, kind of like the Terraform Cloud, Terraform Enterprise workflow, you can only apply once it's merged. Then it kicks off a second job that does it. And so that works okay for some people. I don't think it's quite as feature rich as what Atlantis, but then I'm sure there's other things behind Atlantis that have come out recently that are even more feature rich and easier to use.
Well, and that's one of things which I personally don't understand. I don't have like strict opinion on that, because well, my head is just 50-50 between whether we need to apply code before we merge it, or we need to merge it first and then apply. That's I still cannot understand. Like I cannot convince anyone. Like whoever comes to me and say we need to do this way, I say yeah, of course we need to do that way. Because I don't know. Do you have any like opinion on that?
I do. I struggled with Terraform Enterprise in this respect, especially when I was a consultant at the time, trying to train users that were new to Terraform, which can be difficult. Even myself, I find though that I don't quite get it right. You get a perfect plan, everything looks good. You go to apply, and it's like, oh no, by the way, there's this issue or whatever. So I need to add another commit to it to fix that thing. And so I am in the camps that I want to apply in the PR, and then once everything is satisfied, hopefully I get it on the first go. If not, send up another commit to make that small change. But I do understand at that point it can open up kind of direct access to where you can get an approval, you can get it in a mergeable state, somebody approves it, you do your apply, and then you excuse me, you come in and you make a bunch of changes that nobody saw. But there are workflows to dismiss those approvals on any new commit, so you must force people to always look at the latest commit. But it saves teams a lot of time in terms of opening up a lot of really small pull requests, like try this fix again, try this fix again, to where they could have been doing that just in one pull request. So neither route is perfect. But yeah, that's my preference.
Well, yeah, I agree that it's like when you explain it to me, I'm thinking like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I completely agree. But then another part of my head is thinking like, well, no, Anton, you didn't like this one. You liked another option. Because my main concern is, why would I apply something on my infrastructure what is not in the master branch yet?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I usually think about my infrastructure like, if it is in master, then it is applied. If it's not in master, then I can easily drop whatever is there.
Yeah, the other problem I see with teams that I've been fighting is, say you have a project, you've got your 3 environments, dev, pre-prod, and prod. And what you see happening is sometimes they will apply and target the dev account and then disappear to go see if it works. But then they're kind of like holding up the chain, and you can't really steal the lock because you've got states in a weird mixed state. So I always encourage people that, like, if you want to try it in dev, just open a pull request, affecting the dev environment, apply everything, and go on with it. Because you can't really, in the Atlantis workflow, in my mind, do a partial apply and then just disappear. It really holds up the workflow for others that are trying to get some changes in. But if you apply after merged, you don't have that scenario.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, is because if we continue talking about this, then I will take your point and I will say like, oh yeah, that's I agree with you. And that's well, we have some comments from Michael. That's a really good point. Do you have that written in a blog somewhere we can view? Well, yeah, it's called internet, and whoever asks, like if you ask, for example, Paul Hinsey, who is the director of Terraform at HashiCorp, he has very strict opinion on one of these points. I honestly forgot what was his point, like one of these two. When you talk to Eric Osterman from Cloud Posse, or if you talk to, let's say, other guys from Cloud Posse who has been using this for quite some time, they will most likely say kind of opposite. And that's why, like, during many years of using Terraform, I think this is probably the only place where my answer is it depends. I honestly hate to give this answer, but it depends. Regarding the camp of an apply failing and then closing the PR that it's actually deployed, regarding the apply failing and then closing the PR, what do you mean closing? You have to merge it, right? Well, I didn't understand it during 30 seconds. Maybe you will. Time starts. Brian, your take on this one.
I didn't quite follow it. I mean, we try to put as many strict checks in so that you can't apply something, have it fail, and then merge it. We have a check in there in GitHub where the plan must succeed, or plans, and the applies must succeed before you can merge. Again, because we are using that workflow where we are applying from a pull request and then merging. So we don't want somebody to apply something, it not go through correctly, it fail, in some mixed state and then merge it, because now we're in kind of a really bad shape in terms of what is actually out there, what's in code, and what is the next person going to see when they open up a pull request.
Yeah, right. Well, I think that when we are looking at bigger setups where we have pretty established pipelines overall, we will see more pre-checks to prevent bad things from happening. Like literally, there are many things which we can do to increase our probability of successful deployment of the infrastructure. One of these is, for example, doing some static code analysis or static checks or even dynamic checks on dev environment will significantly improve quality. Michael clarified it and said that those two comments were meant to be one. Okay, so where this blog post can be found, that's a tricky question. I know that guys from Gruntwork wrote utility or project, I don't understand, is called Pipeline inside of their offering. So if you are using Gruntwork, you can have access to the pipeline which will execute your code or your configuration somehow. It's well described, but it's commercial offering, so it's not something what we can easily benefit from. A lot of useful information, but I think it's kind of one-side information is in Terraform documentation, running Terraform in automation, where they explain the point which is implemented in Terraform Cloud and Terraform Enterprise. If you ask me what was this point, again, I forgot it, because I'm strictly on 50-50. I don't know which one is good, which one is bad, in which condition. But nevertheless, I can talk about it from stage if you ask. Yeah, no, I'm kidding. I'm not traveling in the near future. But if anyone goes to reInvent, we can see each other at reInvent, which will be beginning of December. Okay, I think that's it for today, and I want to thank you very much, Brian, for your time, for your insightful knowledge of Atlantis from this angle. You didn't mention anything what I'm using it for, like Terragrunt. So I can see that we are using one tool, but slightly differently from two very kind of distinct points of use. My use case are way too smaller.
Yeah, I haven't gotten into Terragrunt, but I'm seeing more use cases, especially in terms of dependencies. So yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll venture into that.
Maybe you need to look into not Terragrunt, but look into TerraSpace. TerraSpace is another pretty interesting project, which doesn't have so big community, I have to say, but it's very kind of exciting in terms of technology, in terms of approach, and it has similar benefits over Terragrunt. I did a very long episode here on this live stream where I talked to Tung, who's developer of this tool, about a year ago, and I actually know one company who is using this product instead of Terragrunt. So nice. It's growing, maybe not so fast as Terragrunt for obvious reasons, but there is pretty nice competition, I would say.
I'll have to check it out. Thank you.
Yeah, it's written in Ruby, if you ask.
Oh.
But you can make it as compiled version, like no dependencies. So yeah, great. Okay, on this note, I want to thank you one more time, and thanks everyone for joining. I see that we still have 10 people watching. Thanks a lot. See you next week. Maybe, next week probably will be fine. See you. Bye.
Awesome.